Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, my name is Betty, and I am an alcoholic. And I'm very grateful to be here tonight. See, looking out here at all these people, and you know I'm nervous. But I'm nervous in front of 7 people. And the only way I could stand here and not be nervous is to take a drink. And then I would know I had it all over you, you know. And if I took the drink, I wouldn't be standing here. I say I'm grateful to be here tonight. Tonight I'm grateful to be anywhere. Alive, able to walk. We come here and we tell a little bit of what it was like and what happened to us and what it's like now. I hear a lot of people say they hope they never have to go out again because they don't want their story to change, and that's the only way they can get a new story. For me, that hasn't been so. It hasn't been necessary to go out to get a new story. I find that working the program on a daily basis makes a new story. If you want to know why I came here in the first place, I got a surprise for you. I couldn't stop drinking on my own. It happened that I was, when I was a little girl, that I was born in Los Angeles, and we had wine around the house all the time. There was always liquor around the house. Everyone in the family sipped a little. I think my father sipped a little heavier than most. And we had wine about every day. But we didn't consider that drinking. And when I'd steal a little of my father's whiskey and put a little water in it, and it would get a little weak in the refrigerator, he just took it out of the refrigerator. He said the refrigerator was making the whiskey weak. And I just thought it was a funny little thing to do, you know. And I never thought about getting drunk when I was going to school. Getting drunk never entered my mind. I got married at a very early age and had my children at a very early age, before I was 18. And I hadn't begun to drink. I read an article in Times one time that said, if you remember your first drunk vividly, and it's been some years back, then more than likely you are an alcoholic. And I remember my first drunk very vividly. And I remember that I got drunk off of Dubonnet wine. And I remember every time I see that TV commercial where that lady drinks that Dubonnet and she gets glamorous. And she takes another drink and she gets so glamorous, and stars start shining and she starts swinging on the moon. And boy, I wish you could have seen me. I was holding on to the sides of the bed and wishing the heck that bed would stay still, and trying my best not to throw up right in the bed. And I cannot at no time and no way imagine anybody drinking Dubonnet one glass after the other and becoming glamorous. Dubonnet is wine, and getting drunk off of wine, there is nothing glamorous about it. There is nothing glamorous about being drunk. And I was about 19 or so when I began to drink. You see, I was a part of. I was a part of the crowd. I was a leader of the crowd. Where I went, everyone went. I was always laughing, always dancing. I liked to have a lot of fun. And when I started drinking, I was even more fun. And most of the people were drinking too, and they didn't know when I stopped being fun because they were drunk too. So I thought the things I did was all right because everybody I was with did them too. And I started at the bottom. I started drinking in the dives, in the places in Watts, the holes in the walls, the Blue Room, Bucket of Blood, and all these places. Gradually, I moved up to Central Avenue, to the Samba, to the Last Word and Dynamite Jacksons and that Club Alabama. Slowly, I moved up to 5th Street to the Samba, and then to 2nd Street to the Hole in the Ground. And then finally, I moved to the West Side to the clubs on Western Avenue. And then I began to drink in the clubs out here in Santa Monica, and the Branding Room, and Pieces of 8, and places like that. But it didn't make no difference how beautiful the place was that I drank in. This same Betty was drinking in those places. But along around 1963, my daughter, who had decided that she was in love and wanted to get married, and I thought it was beautiful. She was marrying someone that she loved. And I was working hard to help my daughter get ready for this marriage. And I made her gown, and I had fixed up the reception, and I had made all the plans, sent out invitations, and I was joyful. I was happy. And you know what an alcoholic does when they're happy. They drank. So I was doing some heavy drinking. But I was doing the things I was supposed to do. Maybe if I hadn't been drinking them, I'd have been doing them a little better. At the same time, I was working. And I was trying to get this wedding together. And I wanted her to be beautiful, and I wanted her to be happy. And the last day before she got married, the last night, I stayed up all night. She wanted to wear a yellow slipper satin. And I had made the dress, and it was beautiful. I made her veil. And I bought her shoes, and I dyed the shoes to match the dress. And that night, I stayed up to dye the shoes. And some friends came over to help me. And I don't know what else we dyed, but we did get the shoes dyed. And the time for the wedding came, and we went to the church. And I remember seeing my daughter turn around from the pulpit after the preacher said, "I now pronounce you man and wife." I remember just barely seeing her, and I remember the tears in my eyes. And I don't know whether I was crying because I was happy for my daughter, or I was just crying drunk. And I don't remember the rest of the day. I don't remember the reception. I don't remember the gifts. I don't remember who came. I don't know what happened. I've only seen the pictures of it. And I felt so guilty, and I felt so demoralized and so ashamed. I told my husband there's something wrong with my drinking. That's the one time I should have been able to stay sober. That's the one time I should have made things all right. That was the happiest day of my daughter's life, and I could not stay sober. And he said, "Oh, you're okay. It's just that you were happy." And I told him, "No, I'm going to the doctor because I tried to stop drinking." And that's when I found out that I had a problem. Not until the day that I said, "Today I'm not going to drink," did I find out that I could not stop drinking. And so I had a doctor that I went to all the time. And everything I went to him for, he gave me a shot. So I decided to go to him and get the shot so I could stop drinking. And I got there, and I told him, he asked me what was the matter, and I told him, "I just been drinking too much, and I can't seem to stop." And I thought he was going to give me a shot, and he told me to go home and call Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, "Okay," because at that point I was desperate. I was so ashamed, and I went soon enough after the incident for the guilt and this bad feeling not to have passed away. And so I went home and I called Alcoholics Anonymous. And they asked me had I been drinking that day, and I said no. And a couple of hours later, a lady named Marion Chapman called me, and she asked me if I could stay sober until about 8 o'clock. And I thought, is she crazy? Of course I can stay sober till 8 o'clock. All this day, these people have been keeping me sober 1 hour, 2 or 3 hours at a time by calling me up and asking me different things. And I stayed sober until Marion came and got me and took me to a meeting. And I looked at all them old folks in that meeting and thought, my God, if I was that old, I'd have to quit drinking too. And no wonder they have donuts and coffee. They have to dunk the donuts to get them down. I know they don't chew them. And I thought, I couldn't be a part of this. I'm not an alcoholic. I didn't do those things that those people say they did. I've never been to jail for drinking. And I blocked out everything that I had did wrong, and I was listening to what they were saying, and all I could see was the difference. All I could see was the difference. It never occurred to me to look at the similarities right then. After a few weeks or so, they asked me to speak. And I went up and spoke, and I said, my name is Betty, and I don't know if I'm an alcoholic. At that point, I really didn't know. But I knew I was having some kind of trouble with alcohol, and the next person that got up told me if I didn't know, to stick around for 30 days. And if I felt like that I was an alcoholic, I could go on back out there and try some more controlled drinking. Well, I stuck around. In fact, I stuck around for quite a while. And I stayed in Los Angeles a year. And my husband, he was still practicing, he decided that we should leave Los Angeles. And he wanted to go to Denver. And I didn't want to go to a place that dead. I wanted to go someplace where it was alive. Just because I was sober didn't mean I wanted to bury myself. So I wanted to go to New York, so we went to New York. When we got to New York, most places he took me was bars. And I'd never been out of California, never lived out of California in my life. And the cold weather came, and those thunderstorms and the rain, and I got stuck in the snow a few times. And I found that the meetings weren't the same there, and I gradually stopped going to meetings. But I knew to pick up my book, and I picked up my book, and I would read it. And when I'd go to meetings, it seemed like the people that I made friends with would drink after the meetings. And so I just kind of fell out of going to the meetings. And then I remember one day I got stuck on the L for about an hour. And I was so cold when I got off the L that I was standing in front of a bar. And I wanted to go in the bar and have a drink. And at this time, I'd been sober about a year and a half. And I still remembered to pray. And I remembered to pray and ask God not to let me take that drink. But my prayer wasn't as strong as it used to be. And the next time I found myself in a rainstorm, and there was thundering and lightning, and I was waiting for a bus, and I was soaking wet, and I was in front of a liquor store. And I looked at the liquor store, and I almost walked in the liquor store. My higher power was slipping away from me. My husband began to take me to more and more bars. He took me to Harlem and had me running the streets until 4 o'clock in the morning. And my higher power was slipping away. I began to forget about God. I began to forget about what it was like to have peace of mind. I began to forget that I wasn't running it. And one day, standing in the back of Pauline's interlude, and we couldn't get out the front door because it was having a fight at the front door, and wouldn't dare go that way, and there was no back door. I decided, oh, to hell with this. I'm tired of drinking these fruit punches. Get me a glass of sherry. And I had the glass of sherry, and it worked. I didn't get drunk. I didn't get drunk that day. I didn't get drunk the next day. I went out with some of my same women friends that I had been having, and they would offer me a drink, and I was able to say, no, thank you. It was too early in the day, or I'm not drinking today. And then I would have a drink when I wanted one, and I would go to a play, and on intermission, I'd have a rum and Coke or something, and I wouldn't get drunk, and this worked for me. At last, I was a sociable worker. When they say alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful, they got to add the word patient. Because it is patient. It let me allow myself to lull myself into believing that I had control, that I could take care of it, that I could handle it. And then we came back to Los Angeles, and my drinking was progressing, and it progressed to the point of daily drinking again. And my husband's drinking was progressing to the point of daily drinking, and two alcoholics together, acting like two nuts right in the middle of the 60s, when the Beatles were at their best, and the hippies were on the ocean front, and they were cooking food on the beach, and we were part of that. We decided to move down on the beach, and that's where we were, and that's where we began to lose it. We began to lose whatever it was that we ever had. And finally came separation, and finally came my insanity. Finally, I knew that something was terribly wrong with me. And I went to a doctor that I knew helped alcoholics. And I told him, I walked in and he asked me what was wrong with me, and I said, I drank too much. And he says, well, how much do you drink a day? And I looked at him, I said, I thought you helped alcoholics. And he says, I do. I said, then why are you asking me how much I drink a day? I don't know how much I drink a day. I drink all I can get. You know, I didn't see how the man could understand an alcoholic and ask him how much they drink a day. And he put me in the hospital for a week for my high blood pressure. Then when I got ready to come out, he told me to don't drink and don't take no pills. Pills never really was a problem for me anyway. But he told me don't drink, so I didn't drink. And I went along like that for about 6 months. I just didn't drink. And that was white knuckle sobriety. And one day, I was over at my mother's, and my boyfriend got in my car drunk while I was asleep over at my mother's, and he drove it off the freeway and turned it over and burned it up. And the next morning, when I found out what had happened, well, I had an excuse, and I drank. That's what a normal alcoholic would do, is drink. I got drunk. And I had to drink for another year after that. I had to drink to the point of complete demoralization. I had to drink until one day my mother walked up to me. I had moved to Chicago during that time and stayed for about 5 months, taking these geographics. I was going to Chicago to get better, and I moved in with an alcoholic uncle. I don't know if he's alcoholic, but he had the same symptoms I did. He drank every day and got drunk almost every day, so I figure he's alcoholic, you know. But that was no help to me because we just drank together. So when I came back home, I drank more, and things were worse. I was losing my apartment. I couldn't pay my bills. I finally got a job, and I was hanging on to this job with my bare knuckles. I don't know how I was functioning. And I had to drink every day, and every day I said I wasn't going to drink, and every day I had to drink. And finally, some cousins that hadn't seen me for a while came to see me over to my mother's house. And the next day or so, my mother came to me, and she told me, Betty, you have to do something about your drinking. She said, don't you know that people don't fall out of chairs because they have a headache? Well, you know, I looked at my mother, my sweet little mother. She was a very sweet woman. And she wouldn't lie to me about me. And she wouldn't say this to me if I hadn't hurt her. And she put something on my mind. She happened to reach me at a moment of clarity, a moment when I heard what she said. Falling out the chair didn't bother me. It was a knowledge that I didn't know I fell out the chair. To try as hard as I couldn't remember falling out the chair. And that bothered me. And I realized then that I was having blackouts without my knowledge, that I was missing 15 and 20 minutes at a time. And I thought that I didn't have blackouts. I thought that I remembered everything that I did, and that's what made it so horrible. Because every morning I'd wake up and I would go over what I did yesterday, and I wouldn't want to stick my head out the door. But then I found out I was doing things that I didn't remember. And I thought, how horrible, what are some of those things if I blanked them out? And I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to come to AA because I knew it worked. Because I know that's the first thing that crossed my mind. And for 2 weeks I prayed. I'd get drunk and pray. I'd get out on my knees and cry and pray. But God hears our prayers even when we're drunk. And one day, I knew that I'd get up every day and I wasn't going to drink. And whatever I was going to do, I said, today I'm not going to drink. And I'd take that drink, and if I'm going forward, I would start backing up. If I was going to clean the house, forget the house. I'll clean it after a while. Whatever I was going to do, that one drink would change my mind, just that first drink. So one day I decided, today I'm going to clean the house, I'm going to get through with what I got to do, and I'm not going to drink. And it was my day off. And I set out to do what I had to do, and I did it. I cleaned the house. I had a little money in my pocket, and when I got through cleaning the house, boy, I deserved a drink. I had did what I was supposed to do. So I was so tired from cleaning the house and having drank so much that I was so physically run down that I couldn't walk all the way to the liquor store. So I walked to the grocery store, and they only had wine and beer, and I got me a little short dog of sherry. And I went home, and I flipped on my television, and leaned back in my chair, kicked my heels up, and poured my glass of sherry and got all ready to relax. And there was a program on the TV about alcoholic women. And I said, oh, I don't want to see that. And I went to push the button to change it. And I could not push that button. And I did not want to call that number. It kept running across that screen. And I had to get up and go to the telephone and call that number. And a lady told me that they had meetings at 26 and Broadway. And they had one at 8:30 that night. It was on a Tuesday. And she called up, made sure they had a meeting, and called me back and told me to go to the meeting. And she asked me, why didn't I want to go to AA? And I said, AA don't work. And she says, why doesn't it work? Why do you say it didn't work? And I said, because I stopped going. And for the first time in 10 years, I realized that AA didn't work because I didn't go. See, we can keep it very simple, very stupid. And that was a good way of keeping it simple. And I found myself at 8 o'clock not going to the AA meeting, wasn't going to no AA meeting. And I don't know what she told me that for, because I'm not going, and why am I putting my clothes on? Continuously getting dressed. And I lived on 18th in Michigan. I had money in my pocket. I didn't have a car. And I got dressed, and I started walking to that meeting. I'd walk 10 steps and back up 3. I was not going to a meeting. I did not want to go to an AA meeting. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to be with those people. Because nothing they could do for me. And I kept going and backing up and going and backing up. And I got there a little before the coffee break. And when I got there, I walked in the door and I fell in a chair. And everybody turned and looked at me and smiled. And that smile brought me hope. That smile brought me hope. I knew I was home. I knew I was in the right place. I knew from that moment that I didn't have to take another drink if I didn't want to. And all I remember them people telling me on that coffee break was, you'll be back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow at 12 o'clock. We have a noon meeting. And that's all that could go through my head. When that meeting was over, I went around on the porch and picked up the payphone and called a taxi cab. I didn't need that money to drink. I could go home now, and I could go to bed, and I could go to sleep. I had gotten that little bit of hope. And when I got there the next day, when the meeting started, I was sitting there. And the next day, when time for a meeting, I was sitting there. I was working, but I got to those meetings. And I found that things began to change. And I began to have faith. I began to have faith that it would get all right. I was with the same man. I was in the same apartment. I had the same job. I was working with the same people. But things began to get better. They got so much better that within 6 months on that same job, I was making $8 more a day, doing exactly the same thing. But I had gotten better. I had improved. And I thought, this thing isn't working. It's not working. And it was about 30 days, and I hadn't had a drink, and I was riding the bus home, and I was thinking, it's not working, and nothing's happened. And all of a sudden it occurred to me that I hadn't had a drink for 30 days. And to me, that was a miracle. And that I was getting better. I found that I was with the wrong man. You know, we naturally seek lower companions. I got sober, and he was so happy to see me sober. He loved to see me sober. But when I got sober, I realized, what in the heck am I doing with him? So one of my first fringe benefits was I got rid of him. But miracles began to happen in my life. Miracles, little things that I could never conceive of happening to me would happen. And I began to find that if I didn't worry about things, if I turned them over, at first I needed a car. And I was riding a bus, and I said, why am I worried about that? I turned that over to God. Within a week, I was driving a car, it was insured, and I was able to make the payments. And he did it all. I hadn't raised a finger. All I had did was turn it over. I found that other little miracles began to happen in my life. I even got my husband back. Why is the worst thing that ever could have happened to me? I tell you, when they talk about backing up, that is one thing that is very bad for us, is to walk in here and find a new way and start going forward and then turn into a crab and start backing up. Because when we back up into what we come from. And I backed right on up into him. And this man sent me on a sober drunk. I got so drunk without a drink that I was doing the same things that I was doing when I was drinking, kicking over televisions, throwing things through windows. I mean, just like I was drunk. And one day, he did the ultimate to me, or he did something to me that made me so upset. I had gotten rid of him by then. I couldn't get rid of him. My son had to get rid of him for me. And I didn't know what to do. And I found myself turning around, wondering what to do. And I remembered that Claire was open, and I ran to Claire to talk to Luann, just to have someone to talk to, because it was 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. And when I got there, Luann looked at me and she said, "Did you take a drink yet?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Sit down." And I sat down, and about 2 minutes later, a little girl walked in there with about 3 days. And she was trying to make it through the day. She didn't think she could make it through that day without drinking. And I spent an hour and a half with that newcomer. And when I left her, I was all right. I knew I could make it. And they had told me before, when all else fails, try working with the newcomer. But since I didn't know what I needed, God did, and he gave it to me. He gave me exactly what I needed. I saw that girl about a month and a half later. We was working at a carnival or something for Claire, and she told me that I had saved her life. And I told her she had saved mine, because you don't give away something that you can't get back. And what I had given her, I had received twofold, and I was grateful to her. And then I found that being sober is not a bed of roses. Nobody promised us a rose garden. Nobody says that we'll get sober and everything will get better, that nothing will happen to you. Within 2 years of my sobriety, I found I had rheumatoid arthritis, a very crippling kind of rheumatoid arthritis, very painful. And I didn't know how I was going to make it. And I found that they told me in 1977 that if I walked 6 months, I'd be lucky. But through this program, I worked for 2.5 years after they told me that. And I found that faith had grown to a point that at no time during the day did I have the right to have the ego to worry, to ease God out of my life in any form or any manner. That I had to turn everything over to him, because not only was I alcoholic, I was physically ill. And being physically ill, sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I don't think of God first. I think of the pain first, because that's what wakes me up, is the pain. And it takes me a little while to think of God. And sometimes in that pain, the thoughts that he puts in my mind makes me smile. And I asked him when I first found out how ill I was and how ill I was going to be, please don't make me one of those mean, evil, hurting women. You know how some people, they hurt and they take it out on everybody else. And I've been grateful that I haven't had to be that, because he's put too much in my life. He's taken a lot out. He's taken an awful lot out of my life since I've been sober. But for everything he takes away, he gives me back something. I lost my nephew in 1978 in a car crash, and he died suddenly. He's 23 years old. And it was shocking. It hurt so terribly. The pain was so horrible. And my son told me that my nephew had gotten killed. And I sat down, and for the first time in my life, I did not say, "Poor me." I said, "My poor sister." For the first time, I was able to think of someone else instead of me when I was hurting. And in 1979, it seems that all hell broke loose. I lost an uncle. I lost cousins, people that were dear to me. A cousin that I played in the mud with. We used to actually eat those mud pies. And she was like my little sister. And the 2 weeks after I buried her, I stood on her grave and buried a cousin that was a month older than me. Within the period of from May the 1st to October the 6th, I lost 9 family members, very close family members. And all this time, my mother was suffering from terminal cancer, and I was almost living at the hospital. One of those people that I lost was my closest girlfriend who had tried so hard. She was a niece, really, tried so hard to show her a way. I wanted her to come into AA or into Claire or anything that could save her life. And I had to watch her die of alcoholism, a cirrhosis of the liver. I had to watch her after her kidneys stopped functioning and sit there and wait for her liver to stop functioning so they could pronounce her dead. I watched her in this death where her face swelled up and her neck swelled up. If you've never watched anybody die from alcohol, I hope you never have to, because it is a terrible, horrible death. And it's not only painful to the person that's suffering it, it's painful to the people that are looking at it. And when my mother died of cancer, I was grateful that I was sober. I had been sober 4 years. And I found through this program, my family took strength from me. Then my family actually thanked me for carrying them through, or helping them through the time of my mother's illness, of being able to take care of my mother the way I did. And I had to look at my brother when he told me this, and I told him I did not do it. I cannot take credit. God did it. He does it all. He has credit for everything. And when my mother passed away, I remembered thinking, when I first got sober, whatever could make me drink again. And my mother died, would I take a drink? And you know, it took my mother dying to realize that was a cop-out. Of course, we all come in if we have a mother living. Our mothers are usually from anywhere from 15 to 45 years older than us. So more than likely, the mother's going to die before we do. So are we looking for an escape when we say things like that to ourselves? Little things that is going to give us a chance when that time comes. But I guess I was lucky enough to have grown enough by the time my mother passed to understand that. And to understand that she was suffering, that she had cancer, and that I had sat there that night alone. The family had went home. They couldn't bear it. And God had given me the strength to sit there with her and ask her to let go. And when she did let go, I was holding her in my arms, and her eyes was open and she was looking at me. And when I laid her head down, she had closed her eyes, and all the pain and all the grief and all the weight of the world had passed from my mother. And she looked comfortable for the first time in years. She looked at rest, at peace. And I was happy for my mother. And I was sober. And she had seen me sober for 4 years, and she was grateful that I was sober. And she knew it was all right to go away and leave me, that God would take care of me. You see, she had a pretty good relationship with a God of her understanding also. And I thought, gee, that was about the worst thing that happened to me. And everybody says, Betty, it'll get better. Don't worry about things, because things do get better. They pass, but they don't always get better. Sometimes they get worse. Because from my mother, I inherited a stepfather who gets up in the morning and takes a drink while he's plugging in the coffee. And he drinks until he passes out sometime during the day. And he comes to and drinks until he passes out sometime during the night. And he is illiterate. He's very evil. And he is one of the worst people that you would ever want to run into. And don't nobody want to live with him, and they can't understand how in the heck I live with him. And I don't understand how I live with him, but do you know I love that old man? I love him. I really love him. I don't want nothing to happen to him. But I do not tell him not to drink. I do not tell him how much to drink or how much not to drink. I do not tell him where to go or what to do. I do not try to run his life, and I will not let him run mine. And then it came along last year in April. One Saturday morning I woke up, and I wasn't at home. And my son lived next door to me at that time. And I called him to see if he needed me. And my granddaughter told me he had went to the store 3 hours ago to get them something for breakfast, and he hadn't returned. I thought, oh, gee, that car broke down again. And I called back after a while, and a policeman and a policewoman was there. And there was a lot of crying. I found that they told me that my son had had a heart attack and for me to come home. And I said I wanted to go to the hospital, and they said, no, you come home. When I hung up the phone, I knew that my son was dead, because they would have let me go to the hospital. Or they wouldn't have sent police to the house if he was in the hospital. And so I came home to find that my son had went to the market at 9 o'clock when the market opened, and about 10 minutes after 9, my son was dead. And he was 36 years old. Now that's something that I did not expect. Not to see my son drop dead. He was 6'1" and weighed 180 pounds, and he looked a picture of health. And I loved him with all my heart. I have a daughter. I love her the same way. You have a boy and you have a girl, and you love them both. I couldn't choose between the two. But losing my son, that suddenly was so shocking that I became numb. And that evening, when we were trying to take care of things, my daughter said, Mom, it's 8:30. It's time for you to go to a meeting. And I decided, yes, I better get out of here, because I knew this is where I belong. And at that moment, it was about 10 minutes to before I could get off the phones and everything and start out the house. And my stepfather turned around and looked at me and said, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to a meeting. And he stood straight up. He said, oh, no, you're not going to one of them things tonight. And I realized that my stepfather had been sitting there all day thinking of all the things that had happened since I've been sober. That finally, the one thing had happened that was going to make me drunk. And he knew that I could not take my son's death without getting drunk. And again, that power, greater than any of us in the room, had stepped in and took me to the right place. And he's been doing it for me. He's been doing it for me for over 6 years now. And I'm grateful to you for being here and bringing that power into the room. I'm grateful to you for letting me be here. I'm grateful to you for letting me share. And I want to thank you very much.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, in one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.